So guys would get one-year contracts, they might not even get guaranteed money. And if you got hurt, then what happened?
You had no, like...
Too bad.
Yeah.
You knew the risks. You took the risks as a worker. You got hurt. It's not my fault. So, to fight this, right, the National Football League players got together and formed a union to collectively bargain. And that is a form of socialism. Right? Because what can they do collectively? If they don't get what they want, they can go on strike. Well, this last time they were actually locked out. They didn't get, you know, the owners actually locked them out. That's a different story. But you can go on strike and demand collectively, right, more. Owners hate negotiating with labor. They would much rather be able to do what? Negotiate
with individuals.
Each worker individually and have each worker sign a contract on whose terms? The company's terms. The owner's terms. Absolutely. Alright, so now, you know, so socialism is an answer. Unionization is a form of socialism because people are collectively negotiating. I mean, you know, the organization is collectively negotiating for individuals. Right? And people pay into the organization. Right? There are players' dues. Now, the question is, you know, whose freedoms? Whose liberties are at stake? Right? So when we talk about laissez-faire capitalism, when we talk about social Darwinism, right, which you see up there, right, and we talk about the gospel of wealth, those three pillars of conservative ideology, right, that are still around today, right? I mean, we may not use the term laissez-faire too much, but we certainly use the term free markets or free enterprise today, right, or free trade. We certainly use those terms today. We don't use the word social Darwinism today, right? But we code it by saying down below, as you see, creating a culture of dependency, or we want people to be, you know, personally responsible for their behavior, right? We want people to rely on self-reliance. So, very few people use the term social Darwinism today. Primarily why?
It sounds wrong.
Well, it does sound wrong, and why does it sound wrong? Because how's it going to be applied? Nationally and internationally.
Social Darwinism?
Defensively.
Well, wait, social Darwinism?
Yeah.
Well, it could also be kind of applied to, like, race and
Races,
stuff.
yeah, exactly. Why are white Europeans on top?
Yeah.
Survival of the fittest, social Darwinism, right? We're a higher order than these fuzzy wuzzies out there, right? These brown skin, black skin, yellow skin people of the world, they just can't compete with white people. White people are superior, right? So if you use the term social Darwinism today, people are like, oh, you're racist. So you can't use that term, right? So you have to code the language, right? And, you know, this idea of gospel of wealth, you know, really means trickle down. So you can't really use trickle down anymore because, you know, that relates to the 1920s. We know what happened at the end of the 1920s. What happened at the end of the 1920s? Depression. So the code today is we're job creators. And it's unwise to do what?
Tax them labor.
Well, take their money and rail against job creators, those who create jobs in our society, right? Because if you rail against them, then that's a form of what? Well, class warfare. You're pitting one class against another class, and that's unfair. That's not right. That's not how we live in America, right? Why promote class warfare? So it's class warfare if you go after me and I made it, right? And it doesn't make sense to go after me because I am a job creator. Why would you go after the people who are creating jobs in America, especially at a time when there's what? Not a whole lot of jobs. So, take Starbucks, for example. right? Now, actually, this guy Schultz, who runs Starbucks, is actually a fairly socially responsible and environmentally responsible CEO of his corporation. I mean, he actually is kind of enlightened, right? He's made a lot of money. Is he a job creator? For Christ's sake, everywhere you go,
Yes.
you see what?
Yes.
So that's what everybody sort of assumes, right?
He's a job creator.
Until you do what? Do a study and find out whether he actually created jobs or not.
And he hasn't?
Well, for every Starbucks that comes in, what happens oftentimes?
Oh, small businesses.
Small businesses
Go
leave.
out, yeah.
So there may not even be a net gain in jobs. Okay.
Like India, there's like Starbucks everywhere.
Right. Okay. In the meantime, that's why downtown Mill Valley, what? Does not want to have a Starbucks because there are local coffee shops there. Starbucks would take over, they would shut down, and so there may not even be a net gain in jobs.
But they don't have like a Target in Santa Fe.
Right. Because small businesses and they do create jobs, would probably be put out of business. Right? So I don't know if there's a net gain or net loss, right? We don't know if Mitt Romney actually created jobs at Bain Capital whenever his guys, right? I mean, they're corporate raiders is what they were, took over corporations. We don't know that, right? There are different studies out there. There's conflicting evidence, so to speak. So it depends on how you read the evidence, yeah.
Have you seen the Americans for a Better Tomorrow ad about him?
No.
They like argue that he's like a serial killer because he like kills corporations.
Who?
Yeah.
Who does?
Right. I mean, it's probably a little bit of an unfair depiction, but they are corporate raiders, right? And they do come in and take over corporations and tell them and teach them how to be more efficient, right? And generally, whenever you use the word efficiency, you're usually doing what? Shedding jobs, right? You get rid of the sort of labor factor, like your costs. So clearly, they did that in some circumstances. Other circumstances, I think they probably actually saved some corporations, right, from going under. So I don't know. There's probably a net loss there too. There's probably not much of a net gain or much of a net loss. It's probably pretty much a wash. But anyhow, right? What about the poor? Right? Look, I'm the most competitive. I'm the guy that earned it. You really can't take away my property. You can't regulate my property, right? An attack on my liberties and an attack on my property rights is basically an attack, is class warfare. So what do we do about the poor in society? Is there a responsibility to help the poor?
Not on the government.
Certainly not by the government.
Not by the government.
Okay? And charities are even questioned to a degree. Unless the money goes from a charity to whom?
To the poor. Wait, what?
The deserving poor. Right? There is such thing as the deserving poor. Somebody who is a widow, somebody who's kids who are an orphan, somebody who has a disability through no fault of their own. Right? You have people who are deserving that society should look after. Because through no fault of their own, they're in really difficult circumstances. But an able-bodied person who has the ability to work, society owes that person nothing. That's William Grant Sumner. Society does not owe a person a job. It's the responsibility of the individual to do what? Make themselves competitive. That's right. You know what? There are setbacks in life. Get over it. Move on. Learn a new skill. I know you're an old dog. Learn some new tricks. Make yourself employable. Because if we have this government assistance, then we create this whole culture of dependency. Or as some person said to me, you know what? You got a wild animal. And you start feeding the wild animal in your backyard. What happens after?
They keep coming back.
Right? They lose